Everyone talks about Greek food like it's some kind of Mediterranean paradise. Olives, feta cheese, and fresh bread dipped in golden olive oil. Sounds delicious, right? Well, here's the brutal truth. The most feared warriors in ancient Greece weren't eating any of that fancy stuff. The Spartan diet was designed to create absolute killing machines, and it was about as far from your local Greek restaurant as you can get. These guys ate like their lives depended on it, because they literally did. Every meal was calculated to build muscle, increase endurance, and prepare them for the brutal reality of hand-to-hand combat. The Spartans ate for war, and the foods that kept them alive and fighting would probably make you sick to your stomach. But they created the most disciplined, physically powerful warriors the world had ever seen. Let's break down the real foods that turned ordinary men into legendary warriors who could fight all day and still have energy to march 20 miles in full armor. Starting with the most famous and absolutely disgusting food that every Spartan warrior ate daily, melas zomos. Melas zomos, or black broth, was made primarily of 4 simple ingredients: boiled pork shank, fresh blood, salt, and vinegar. This soup was liquid survival packed into a bowl that looked like something you would find in a horror movie. The vinegar was used as an emulsifier to keep the blood from clotting during the cooking process. Picture thick, dark liquid that smelled like iron and death, served steaming hot every single day. The recipe was brutally simple because it had to be. You took whatever pig parts you could get, threw them in a pot with water, added the fresh blood from the slaughter, poured in some vinegar to keep everything from turning into a bloody mess, and seasoned it with salt. Then, you let it simmer until it became this thick, protein-packed substance that would fuel a warrior through hours of combat training. Why did it work? Because this horrific-looking broth was basically liquid protein and iron. The blood provided massive amounts of iron to keep their energy levels high, while the pork gave them the protein needed to build and maintain their incredible muscle mass. The salt replaced what they lost through constant sweating during training, and the vinegar helped with digestion and preservation. Every Spartan warrior drank this stuff daily, and it was so famous throughout Greece that other city-states used it as proof that Spartans were basically barbarians. But those civilized Greeks weren't conquering anyone, while the Spartans were building the most feared military machine in the ancient world. The preparation of black broth was also a communal activity that reinforced military bonds. Warriors would gather around the cooking pots, sharing stories of battle while the broth simmered. The smell alone was enough to separate the weak from the strong. Visitors from other Greek cities would literally gag when they smelled it cooking. But for Spartan warriors, that smell meant strength, endurance, and the promise of another day of brutal training. The consistency was thick enough to coat a spoon, and the taste was metallic and salty with a vinegar bite that would make your eyes water. Sliding into number 9, it's the barley. While other Greeks were eating wheat bread, Spartans built their entire diet around barley. They consumed nutrient-dense barley as one of their main food sources. But this wasn't the processed grain you might think of. This was whole, tough barley that required serious chewing and provided sustained energy for hours. They ate it as porridge, mixed it into their black broth, and even made a kind of barley cake that they could carry on long marches. Barley was perfect for warriors because it digested slowly, giving them steady energy instead of the quick sugar rush and crash that comes from other grains. The Spartans understood something that modern nutritionists are just figuring out. Complex carbohydrates provide the sustained energy needed for endurance activities. A bowl of barley porridge in the morning could keep a warrior going through hours of weapons training, wrestling, and combat practice without the energy crashes that would make them vulnerable in battle. But here's the thing about Spartan barley. It wasn't soft and easy to eat. They prepared it tough and chewy on purpose. Everything about Spartan food was designed to make them stronger, including their jaw muscles. They believed that eating soft, easy food would make them soft and weak. so even their grains were a form of training. Taking cover at number 8, it's the meat. The Spartan diet would regularly consist of meat, including pigs, goat, and sheep, and spoils from hunting would be on the menu too, including animals like wild boar and rabbits. But this was lean, tough muscle from animals that had lived hard lives in the wild. Wild boar was especially prized because hunting it was dangerous and required skill. A wild boar could kill a man, so taking one down was both a source of food and a test of warrior ability. The meat was incredibly lean and packed with protein, perfect for building the kind of functional muscle that could swing a sword for hours or hold a spear steady in a phalanx formation. They ate every part of the animal too. Nothing was wasted. Organs provided vitamins and minerals that kept them healthy, while the tough, stringy meat from older animals gave their jaws and digestive systems a workout. The Spartans believed that eating the heart of a brave animal would give them courage, and the liver would give them strength. The hunting itself was part of their training. Young Spartans were sent into the mountains to hunt for days at a time, learning to track, kill, and prepare their own food. It was about learning to survive in the wild and developing the predatory instincts they'd need in battle. The way they prepared wild game was as brutal as everything else about Spartan life. They would roast it over open fires until the outside was charred and the inside was barely cooked. No fancy seasonings or any delicate preparation. They just need to make sure that the meat is cooked hard and fast to preserve as much protein as possible. The tougher the meat, the more they valued it, because chewing tough meat built jaw strength and taught patience. Wild rabbits and birds were also common, caught in traps or hunted with slings. These smaller game animals provided variety in their diet and taught young warriors patience and precision. Setting traps required understanding animal behavior and showed the same strategic thinking they'd need in warfare. Holding the 7th spot is the goat cheese. Dairy was also commonplace in the Sparta diet, with milk and cheese being regular components. But this wasn't the soft, creamy cheese you get at the store. Spartan goat cheese was hard, salty, and could survive for weeks without refrigeration. Goat cheese was perfect for warriors because it was portable, didn't spoil easily, and packed a massive amount of protein and fat into a small package. A chunk of hard goat cheese could keep a warrior fed during a long march, and the high fat content provided the calories needed for their intense training regimen. The goats themselves were tough mountain animals that produced strong, nutrient-dense milk. The cheese made from this milk was correspondingly tough and flavorful. It had to be gnawed rather than eaten, which again fit into the Spartan philosophy that everything should make you stronger, including your food. They often mixed chunks of goat cheese into their barley porridge or ate it alongside their black broth. The combination of protein from the cheese and carbohydrates from the barley provided balanced nutrition that could sustain them through their brutal daily training routines. At number 6, we have the dried fish. Fish would also be eaten when available, but fresh fish spoiled quickly. So Spartans developed methods of drying and preserving fish that turned it into a portable, long-lasting source of protein. Dried fish was the ancient equivalent of protein bars. It was tough, chewy, and packed with nutrients. The drying process concentrated the protein and made it last for months without spoiling. Warriors could carry dried fish on campaigns and have a reliable source of high-quality protein wherever they went. The fish they used were usually small, whole fish that were gutted and dried in the sun. The result was something that looked like leather but provided essential amino acids and healthy fats. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. They also made a kind of fish paste by grinding dried fish into powder and mixing it with salt and vinegar. This created a concentrated protein source that could be added to water to make a quick, nutritious drink during long marches or extended battles. The process of making dried fish was labor-intensive and required perfect timing. Fish had to be caught fresh, cleaned immediately, and laid out in the sun during the hottest part of the day. Too much moisture left behind meant spoilage. Too little meant the fish would crumble into dust. Spartan warriors learned to judge the perfect dryness by touch and smell, skills that served them well when they had to live off the land during campaigns. The dried fish was so hard it could chip teeth if you bit into it wrong. Warriors would soften it by soaking it in water or wine, or they'd grind it between stones to make it easier to eat. The strong, fishy taste was overpowering, but it provided essential nutrients that kept their bodies functioning during extreme physical stress. Number 5 on the list is the lentils and beans. Legumes were a huge part of the Spartan diet, providing plant-based protein and fiber that kept their digestive systems healthy. Their focus on nutrient-dense, unprocessed foods like legumes built strength and endurance. But these weren't soft, easy-to-digest beans. Spartans ate tough, chewy legumes that took serious effort to chew and digest. They believed that food should be work, and even their vegetables were designed to make them stronger. Lentils were particularly important because they could be stored for long periods and provided complete proteins when combined with barley. A meal of lentils and barley gave them all the amino acids they needed to build and maintain muscle mass. They often cooked lentils with pieces of meat to create a thick, hearty stew that could feed a group of warriors. The combination of plant and animal proteins provided sustained energy and helped with muscle recovery after intense training sessions. At number 4, let's talk about vinegar. Vinegar was a crucial part of the Spartan warriors' daily nutrition. It was one of the primary ingredients in their black broth, but they also drank it dilute with water as a way to stay hydrated and maintain their energy levels. The acetic acid in vinegar helped with digestion and absorption of nutrients from their tough, protein-heavy diet. It also helped preserve food and prevent spoilage, which was crucial for warriors who might be on campaign for months at a time. They believed that vinegar made them tougher and more resilient. The sour taste was seen as character building, and drinking vinegar was considered a way to develop mental toughness alongside physical strength. Modern science has shown that vinegar can help regulate blood sugar and improve endurance. So the Spartans were onto something with their vinegar consumption. It was their version of a sports drink, helping them maintain steady energy levels during long training sessions. Coming in at number 3 is the honey. When Spartans needed quick energy, they turned to honey. This was their only source of concentrated sugar, and they used it strategically to fuel intense training sessions or provide quick energy during battle. Honey was precious and expensive, so it wasn't eaten casually. It was reserved for times when warriors needed immediate energy. A spoonful of honey before a particularly brutal training session could provide the glucose needed for explosive movements and intense effort. They also mixed honey with vinegar and water to create a drink that provided both quick energy and sustained hydration. This combination gave them the immediate energy boost they needed, while also supporting longer-term endurance. The honey they used was wild honey, often gathered from dangerous locations that required climbing or fighting off aggressive bees. Even getting their sweetener was a form of warrior training. Wild honey was darker and more intense than the processed honey we know today. It contained bits of wax, pollen, and sometimes even small pieces of bee larvae, which added extra protein to their diet. The Spartans didn't strain out these extras, and they ate everything, believing that consuming the entire product of the hive would give them the strength and organization of the bees themselves. Gathering honey required courage and skill. Warriors would climb cliff faces or brave dense forests to reach bee colonies, often getting stung repeatedly in the process. They developed techniques for smoking out bees, using burning herbs, and learned to move slowly and deliberately to avoid triggering aggressive responses. The honey they risked their lives for was liquid gold, providing not just energy but also natural antibiotics and healing properties for wounds. Leading up to number 2, we have the olive oil. While olives themselves weren't a major part of the Spartan diet, Olive oil was crucial for their nutrition and training. They used it for cooking, but also as a source of concentrated calories and healthy fats. Olive oil provided the high-calorie content that warriors needed to fuel their incredible training regimens. A tablespoon of olive oil contains over 100 calories, mostly from healthy fats that could be used for sustained energy. They also used olive oil externally, rubbing it on their skin before training to prevent chafing and protect their skin from the sun. After training, they would scrape off the oil along with dirt and sweat using a tool called a strigil. The oil helped with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and provided the essential fatty acids needed for hormone production and recovery. For warriors whose bodies were constantly under stress, these healthy fats were crucial for maintaining their physical condition. And finally, at number 1, we have mountain tea. They also incorporated Greek mountain tea for its health benefits. It was medicine in a cup, designed to keep warriors healthy and ready for battle. Mountain tea was made from wild herbs that grew in the harsh mountain environment around Sparta. These plants were tough and resilient, and the Spartans believed that consuming them would make them tough and resilient too. The tea provided antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds that helped with recovery from training and minor injuries. It also helped with the digestion of their heavy, protein-rich diet and provided essential vitamins and minerals. They drank it hot in the morning to wake up their systems and cold during the day to stay hydrated. The bitter, herbal taste was considered character building, and drinking mountain tea was seen as part of developing the mental toughness needed for warfare. The Spartans were characterized by self-discipline and austerity, and this was expressed even in their eating habits. They generally did not allow themselves to be near indulgent foods and believed that gluttony should be controlled. Everything about Spartan food was designed to create better warriors. Every meal was calculated to provide the nutrients needed for their intense training, while also building mental toughness and discipline. They consumed 2 meals a day, focused on nutrient-dense foods. This was about training their bodies to perform on limited resources and maintaining the hunger that kept them sharp and aggressive. The food was intentionally tough, bland, and sometimes disgusting. They believed that enjoying food too much would make them soft and weak. Every meal was a form of training, building not just physical strength, but mental resilience. The idea with Spartan youth was to keep them just a bit hungry in order to prepare them for deprivations in the field during wartime. This constant mild hunger kept them focused and motivated, always ready for the next challenge. These foods created some of the most physically capable warriors in human history. This diet not only fueled their warriors in battle, but also supported their athletic prowess in the Olympics. The Spartans were athletes who could compete at the highest levels while also being deadly in combat. Their diet was perfectly designed for their lifestyle. High protein for muscle building, complex carbohydrates for sustained energy, healthy fats for hormone production, and just enough calories to fuel their training without making them soft or slow. But here's the thing. This diet only worked because it was combined with the most intense physical training regimen ever devised. These foods would have made regular people sick, but Spartan warriors burned through thousands of calories every day through constant training and combat practice. The black broth that made other Greeks gag was perfect fuel for men who spent hours every day fighting with heavy weapons and armor. The tough, chewy foods that seemed barbaric to civilized Greeks were exactly what warriors needed to build the jaw strength and digestive power required for their lifestyle. This wasn't sustainable for regular people living regular lives, but for warriors whose entire existence was devoted to combat and physical excellence, it was the perfect fuel. The foods that seem harsh and unappetizing to us were exactly what was needed to create the most feared military force in the ancient world. The Spartans understood that food was medicine, fuel, and training all rolled into one. They didn't separate nutrition from their warrior lifestyle, and everything was connected. Their diet was just another form of discipline, another way to build the mental and physical toughness that made them legendary. So, the next time you think about what it takes to be a warrior, remember that it starts with what you put in your mouth. The Spartans ate like their lives depended on it because they did. And that's exactly why they became legends that people still talk about thousands of years later. They were the building blocks of the most disciplined, powerful warriors who ever lived. Every meal was a choice to become stronger, tougher, and more capable. That's the real secret of Spartan power, and it's something that can't be captured in any movie or book. It has to be lived, one brutal meal at a time.